Welcome to the channel for the future caretakers of resurrected species. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keepers Association.
Oh, hello there. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keeper Association. My name is Austin. Now, it definitely stands to reason that throughout this channel, I made videos about the hypothetical possibilities of raising certain animals in captivity if they ever get resurrected. If you haven't seen the title, I'm pretty certain you know this one is going to be a very interesting one. And I'm pretty sure we all have heard about dire wolves lately in this year. Now, let's get into all the information about the dire wolf from the past and the dire wolves of today.
The Anisian dirus, or the dire terrible wolf, is a prehistoric species of canid that lived in both North and South America that first appeared around 250,000 years ago and went extinct approximately 10,000 years ago. Appearance-wise, they seem to be like gray wolves of today, although they're bigger. The average dire wolf proportions were similar to those of two modern North American wolves, the Yukon wolf and the northwestern wolf. The largest of these northern wolves today have a shoulder height of up to 38 inches tall, or 3.2 feet tall, and a body length of 69 inches long, or 5.75 feet long. Some dire wolf specimens from Rancho La Brea are smaller than this, and some are larger, but this is a good average for dire wolves. Dire wolves would weigh between 132 to 150 pounds on average, but they could get up to 243 pounds in weight, but no heavier than that. This is heavier than the average Yukon wolf, who would normally get between 82 to 95 pounds, with some individuals occasionally getting heavier, from 121 to 175 pounds in weight. Along with being bigger, they're also more robust, have thicker legs, larger shoulder blades, and a more stockier appearance. Their skulls were larger than that of modern wolves, giving them a more powerful bite than modern wolves. This is thought to help them take down larger prey, to process their kills faster before competition came about, and even crack open bones for the nutritious bone marrow. Much like modern-day wolves, there are some geographic differences in their physiology. It all depends on their different environments and localized situations. Speaking of which, dire wolves lived in a wide variety of habitats across the continents. In North America, they preferred open grasslands, plains, and forested mountain areas. They had also lived in tropical wetlands and deciduous forests. In South America, they generally prefer arid savannas. Like mentioned earlier, dire wolves are adapted to hunting large prey of the time. Their prey mostly consisted of bison, which was a major prey species, horses, camels, and even ground sloths. They would also hunt juvenile mammoths and other smaller prey items as well. They're also not above scavenging when the opportunity presents itself. Like modern wolves, and what should be obvious with their choice of prey, dire wolves lived and hunted in packs. It is thought that dire wolves lived in larger packs than that of modern wolves, and were more intense when it came to mating competition. Despite their intense competitive behavior, there is evidence from the La Brea tar pits to show that they did care for their wounded. Like mentioned earlier, dire wolves have said to have died off 10,000 years ago. While the reasoning for their extinction is as mysterious as all Ice Age extinctions, it is generally thought that a combination of climate change, loss of their prey, and the arrival of humans, either as competition brought forth foreign diseases or both, was the cause of their extinction.
Now, normally this is why I would get right to the topic of the video, after talking about the general information about the topic species. However, out of all the species I've ever talked about in this channel, or even any extinct species in general, the actual extinction of the dire wolf is definitely not where the dire wolf story ends.
On October 1st, 2024, At a private facility in the northern United States, a pair of wolf brothers named Romulus and Remus were born. They were the creations of Colossal biosciences, gray wolf clones that were genetically modified with traits that would make them similar to dire wolves. At least, traits based off of ancient DNA samples obtained from a 13,000-year-old tooth discovered at Sheridan Cave in northwestern Ohio, and a 72,000-year-old ear bone found in American Falls, Idaho. Their existence was revealed to the world on April 7th, 2025. Also, another one of these wolves, a female named Khaleesi, was born on January 30th, 2025. And currently, as this video is being made, these 3 wolves are housed in a secured 2,000-acre ecological preserve surrounded by 10-foot fencing at an undisclosed location in the United States. The birth and reveal of these wolves has been very controversial, especially with whether they could be called dire wolves and that the species have been resurrected. As many of you probably already know, I've made several videos about these wolves and my thoughts on them, but to help you all out and make this short, these wolves were modified with traits from modern canids to have them resemble the dire wolf in phenotype. They didn't modify them with any true dire wolf DNA from their fossil samples, claiming that the genetics are too damaged or degraded to use for modification. They even claimed that if they modified the wolves with the gene that gave the dire wolves a pale pelt, instead of the white pelt they used that came from a domestic dog, they would have subjugated the wolves to develop blindness and deafness. According to a currently unreviewed study, gray wolves and dire wolves shared 99.5% of their DNA with each other. Even if this seems to be pretty close, there are still 12,235,000 individual differences between them, and the traits that the colossal wolves were modified with are relatively minor.
However, Colossal Biosciences did claim, as this video was being made, that they're going to make more of these wolves, and they're even going to modify them further with more traits of the dire wolves, especially from more traits that they found in the genomes. So, we'll have to see how it goes from there on. Now, I know it's going to be weird to talk about resurrecting the dire wolves, since we've already discussed the origin of the colossal wolves. Now, in order to avoid confusion in this video, I'll refer to the prehistoric wolves as the dire wolves, and the genetically modified wolves as colossal wolves. That way we can avoid confusion. Anyway, but I still feel like it would still be best to talk about this process. I mean, regardless of what you think about the colossal wolves, their creation, birth, and their early lives gives us a good idea of what it would be like to truly resurrect and raise dire wolves, and basically what it'll be like, and it will give us a good basis on what to work on in the scenario that we ever actually resurrect true dire wolves.
Obviously, the first step is to get DNA of the dire wolf itself. The locations where the DNA samples that Colossal used to reference their wolves' traits from were in locations that would occasionally be cold, but not permafrost cold, like where woolly mammoth DNA was found at. However, the dire wolf was not that adapted to the cold as the woolly mammoth was, and their most northern range was southern Alberta. In theory, better DNA samples could be found in this location, for it gets a bit colder than the locations Colossal used. When you get a good amount of DNA, next would be modifying a living relative with the genetic material of the extinct species. For the longest time, the dire wolf was thought to be just a species of wolf. In fact, when the dire wolf was first described in 1858, it was given the name of Canis dirus, basically having the same genus name as that of the modern wolf. But a 2021 study on the dire wolf's DNA told the researchers that the dire wolf was more related to jackals and South American canids than to the modern gray wolf. This research has led to the change of the dire wolf's genus name from Canis to Enosion. However, Colossal Bioscience claimed that when they studied the dire wolf DNA, the dire wolf was much more closely related to the gray wolf than previously thought, about 99.5% closely related.
Although, definitely take this claim with a pinch of salt, because by the time this video was being made, they made their claims from a scientific study that has not been pre-reviewed yet. So, again, take it with a grain of salt.
Either way, it would be obvious that there are a handful of modern canids that would be capable candidates for modifying with dire wolf DNA or dire wolf traits. The two I would choose would either be the African jackal or the gray wolf, especially with taking into account of both the 2021 study and Colossal's paper. Now, while the preferred path in modifying the candidate is to use DNA of the dire wolf, the DNA's condition would make this step not so straightforward. Even the best preserved prehistoric DNA would have errors caused by degradation in the genetic material as the ages passed, and these errors would cause genetic issues that would affect the quality of life for the resulting animal, much like the pale coat causing blindness and deafness mentioned earlier in this video. To help counteract this, it would be advisable to find similar traits of modern relatives that could work as a safer substitute for the original trait. Also, even if there were no issues caused by the degradation of the DNA, there is a possibility of the DNA holding a dark secret. But we'll talk about that later in the video.
Once you have the genome of the donor animal modified with the dire wolf's genetics or traits, you would then need to place the DNA inside the egg of a canid, preferably the canid that you use the DNA for, and then stimulate to become an embryo, and then transfer it into the donor or surrogate mother. Again, you can look at how Colossal did with their wolves and what they did, which I would definitely say is a good way to go.
Since dire wolves were huge and they definitely wanted to avoid any complications with the pregnancy and or birth, Colossal used large dog breeds to be the surrogate mothers of their wolf cubs. This is definitely a good way of going for it, since with these large dogs, they can definitely help avoid dealing with the possibilities of complications when carrying the pregnancy to term. Also, there is a great possibility of using the Colossal wolves as surrogates for the dire wolves. While this might seem controversial or whatnot to some of you, there is a good reason for this. While having them be taken by large dogs would make it easy for monitoring and rearing, having them being birthed and reared by Colossal wolves would help the resulting cubs behave more like wolves or wild canids, more so than domesticated dogs when the need arises, especially if you want to have them be integrated into a true wild pack structure or even for potential rewilding in the future. Or perhaps it would be better to have a cross-fostering of the dire wolf pups. What this means is that while you can still have a large dog give birth to the dire wolf, but you can later add the dire pup or pups to a litter of a Colossal wolf pack so that the she-wolves can raise the dire wolf pups as their own. This would be the best, since you can be able to closely observe the pregnancy with low stress to the mother and pups, but still be able to have them get to be in the Colossal pack at the right time, and the pups could learn how to be wolves. To make this work, you would need the Colossal wolves to have a litter of their own so that the maternal instincts are there and strong, and that the pups are around the same age as the dire wolf pups. Along with having the Colossal wolves having a litter, the dire wolf pups would need to be rubbed with the organic material, dirt, straw, hair, etc. of the Colossal wolf's den. You would also need to stimulate the pups to urinate on each other to unify their scent, and put milk on their mouths to equalize the smell. As gross as this may seem, this is to get rid of any scent that would make them smell like a stranger to the mother Colossal wolf and overall Colossal pack.
Now, I know that the topic of this video is on raising dire wolf cubs. I think we should at least talk a little bit about breeding the dire wolves in captivity, at least for a little bit. When you resurrect a significant amount of dire wolves, you would definitely want them to be genetically diverse so that you could be able to avoid inbreeding, which would obviously increase the chances of very bad traits that would decrease the species' fitness. We might actually talk about a consequence of such traits later in this video.
If dire wolf packs are structured like that of modern wolf packs, these packs would generally start with a mated pair of wolves, the so-called alpha and beta of the pack, but this idea of wolf packs is outdated. So, to start a new dire wolf pack, you would need to have a male and female dire wolf form a bond through a process of courtship involving play and communication. Once a strong bond is formed, they become a pair and work together to raise their pups. On the topic of when dire wolves are ready to breed, it is mostly likely that, like modern-day wolves, dire wolves might reach sexual maturity at around 2 years of age. While we don't know what the breeding season is for the dire wolf, they are most likely seasonal breeders. In gray wolves, they start breeding when the days get longer in late winter from January to March, with the pups born in April or May. While the relationship between them and dire wolves would still be considered debatable, this could be a good guess for the dire wolf. On an added note, jackals are seasonal breeders as well, so even this would work. As your pack grows, you will need to manage the pack dynamics. In some cases, a single alpha pair is sufficient for a pack. However, to prevent fighting and to manage pack dynamics, younger wolves may need to be separated from their parents to form their own breeding pairs. Like any social group, there will occasionally be drama within the pack. You may need to move the wolves to a different enclosure or temporarily separate them to resolve social issues and prevent fighting.
While you would definitely want to have their natural mothers or surrogates in the case of the first generation, whether you're using domestic dogs or colossal wolf surrogates to raise the dire wolf pups, there will be times, whether like if the mother died, reject the pups, or even like a medical emergencies, that the dire wolf pups will need to be hand reared by the keepers. And as you raise these dire wolf pups, there will be certain milestones to their growth stages and whatnot that we should reach when they're at certain ages. Now, while dire wolves would definitely give us surprises and curveballs, we can get a good idea of when and what these milestones of their growth is, based off of what we know from both the modern gray wolves and even the colossal wolves. Along with these milestones, we'll also talk about some of their needs and extent at certain ages.
At birth, the average weight of a gray wolf pup is between 0.5 to 1 pound. The birth weight of the colossal wolves has been compared to this to determine expected growth following birth, and it would be possible that it would be the same for dire wolves too. When they are born, they are blind with closed eyes, deaf with small ears, have little pugged noses, have a limited sense of smell, but have a good sense of taste, touch, and even has a sense of balance. And, recently, it has been discovered that gray wolf and domestic puppies can be able to detect heat with their noses. In the tip of their noses or rhinarium, they have an infrared sensor that detects weak thermal radiation, allowing them to sense body heat. When they're adults, they can detect the body heat of small prey. But, as newly born pups, they just use it to find the warm body of their mother. Mind you that this ability is, so far, only found in domestic dogs and gray wolves. While we are not entirely certain that all the other species of canines, including the dire wolves, have or had this adaptation, it would be an advantage for them to have, and might help them in the same way it helps domestic dogs and their wild ancestor. When born, they are completely dependent on their mother for feeding and care, especially since they have limited mobility, utilizing their front legs more than hind legs. They can vocalize at this stage, with their vocalizations including whines and yelps.
Now, for the next 14 weeks after birth, the pups should gain at least an average of 2.6 to 3.3 pounds a week as they grow. And if the direwolf pups had to be hand reared for one of the reasons I mentioned earlier, a proper milk replacer formula would definitely need to be found and used.
The best milk replacer for wolf puppies is a commercial puppy milk replacer, with a goat's milk-based formula being a top choice, followed by other high-quality, commercially prepared puppy formulas like Esbalac. But definitely avoid cow's milk as it has too much lactose and can cause digestive issues. Use a bottle with an appropriate nipple, which is generally a miracle nipple or a nipple from a human baby bottle for larger puppies, ensuring the flow rate is slow enough to prevent aspiration, but not so slow that the puppy tires out. The pup's sucking and latching ability should be monitored to ensure that the puppy is feeding correctly. Before feeding, you may need to stimulate the pup to urinate and defecate, especially for very young pups. When bottle feeding the pups, the general guideline is to feed 1 cc of formula per ounce of body weight every 3 hours. Make certain that the flow of the milk while feeding is at a safe rate. If milk comes out of the nose or mouth, give them a break so that they don't accidentally inhale the milk. When you're done feeding them, burp them so they can expel any swallowed air. Continue to stimulate the pup to urinate and defecate after meals until it starts to do so on its own, and monitor the pup's health and appetite to make certain that it is okay. Between day 11 and day 15, both their eyes and ear canals begin to open. Their eyes would be blue, at least in the case of the colossal wolves, uncertain if the dire wolves would be like that too, and are not fully developed. At this time, they'll begin to crawl around and explore their den area. As they continue to grow with a gradual weight gain, their teeth begin to emerge and will start to stand and walk, albeit clumsily. Their vocalizations at this point would include whimpers, squeaks, and even their first howling attempts.
When they're basically between 2 or 3 weeks old, they should weigh about 3.5 pounds. And when wolf pups are 3 weeks old and younger, they can't be able to thermoregulate themselves, and special care will need to be taken to keep them in a temperature-controlled setting, so they don't, overheat or get too cold. Their environment should be around 85 degrees Fahrenheit until they're 1 month old if they're being hand-reared. But also depending on its health, its environment should be kept at this temperature for a little bit longer. And if the pups are being reared by their mother, whether natural or surrogate, the temperature of the den should be kept between 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit and should never, ever be below 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
At this stage, they begin to explore and venture beyond the den area. They would also begin eating regurgitated food brought to them by the mother. In the place of regurgitated food during hand rearing, and as a way to start weaning, provide a gruel that is a mix of water, ground meat, and milk replacer. In the beginning, provide a small amount of it and increase the amount as time goes out and their appetite increases. Their hearing improves at 4 weeks and their ears become erect at 5 weeks. Their adult hair starts to appear as well. Social bonds with littermates develop at this time. It is essential that when hand-rearing them, they are not raised alone, either with other dire wolf pups, colossal wolf pups, or even puppies of medium to large dog breeds would be considered as good playmates to dire wolf pups. This is so that they can develop social skills and not become socially lame. They would or should continue to gain weight and grow rapidly at this stage. At around this time, the dire wolf pups start to show signs of independence with increased mobility and play behavior. Their milk teeth develop and they begin to consume solid food, especially as they're started to get weaned from their mother's milk. They even start the early stages of modeling parental behavior to learn hunting skills. At the ages of between 6 to 9 weeks of age, it is advisable that dire wolf pups get vaccinated for various diseases that plague canids today. We'll talk about 4 of them, which are canine distemper, rabies, canine parainfluenza, and parvovirus. Canine distemper is a highly contagious and potentially deadly viral disease that attacks the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and nervous systems of dogs. It's generally transmitted by airborne transmission from respiratory droplets from an infected animal, direct contact with an infected animal, or contact with contaminated objects. The early signs of this disease include a fever, eye and nasal discharge, coughing, and lethargy. Later signs would involve vomiting and diarrhea, along with neurological signs such as seizures, head tilting, muscle twitches, circling, and even paralysis. There is currently, as of 2025, no cure for canine distemper. The only thing that could be done is vaccination, and if the disease struck them down before then, supportive treatment like using IV fluids to avoid dehydration, antibiotics against infections, and medications that can control seizures is the best. It's basically managing the symptoms as the canine's body fight against the disease. Rabies is a fatal viral disease that attacks the central nervous system. It's often transmitted via contaminated saliva through a bite or even a scratch. Almost any mammal can be a carrier of rabies, but definitely skunks, raccoons, bats, and foxes are the most common ones. Early symptoms include a fever, headache, feeling unwell, anxiety, and discomfort at the site of the bite. Later symptoms include confusions, hallucinations, aggressive behavior, fear of water, paralysis, and, of course, foaming at the mouth. There is no cure for rabies, and when the symptoms first pop up, there is no hope. Vaccinations are a definite must to prevent an infection from rabies. If a vaccination was not done and the wolf was bitten by a rabid animal, immediate medical attention is needed. Thorough washing of the wound. Have the animal receive a shot of rabies immune globulin, RIG, to provide immediate antibodies and a series of rabies vaccine shots. All of this needs to be done immediately after the bite. Canine parainfluenza, also known as kennel cough, is a highly contagious viral respiratory illness that affects dogs. It spreads via airborne transmission from coughs, sneezes, and other respiratory secretions, and direct contact with an infected dog or with a surface where an infected dog had contact with. Symptoms of this ailment include coughing wet or dry, a low-grade fever, nasal discharge with either mucus, pus, or even blood, decreased energy, decreased appetite, and even vomiting in some cases. Along with vaccinations, the only thing to do when a dog is infected is to manage the symptoms and prevent any complications. You do this by having the dog rest in isolation, provide antibiotics to prevent secondary bacterial infection, provide anti-inflammatory medications for the irritation of the dog's respiratory tract, and keep the dog hydrated. With younger or older canids, who are the most susceptible, that are sick with it, should be kept under a vet's attention. Parvovirus is generally a family of viruses. We'll focus on canine parvovirus, or CPV. CPV is a virus that is extremely contagious. It spreads through infected feces and would even survive on surfaces like shoes, clothing, or a dog's fur for months. Symptoms of parvo include lack of energy, lack of appetite, fever, vomiting, violent, even bloody diarrhea, abdominal pain, bloating, severe dehydration, and even weight loss. If the canid is not given any vaccination for it, the infected dog would need immediate, intensive veterinary care with supportive care such as IV fluids, anti-nausea medication, and antibiotics to treat secondary bacterial infections.
Along with these elements, there is also one element that we actually have found in the fossil record that is definitely a possibility for the dire wolf to suffer from, and definitely needs to be watched out for.
This ailment that one would need to watch out for is osteochondrosis dissecans. This is a condition in which a piece of bone and cartilage separates from the underlying bone, typically in a joint. Symptoms of this ailment include pain, swelling of the joints, stiffness, clicking or popping sounds in the joints, and a lost range of motion. This ailment is a possible problem for dire wolves because a 2023 study has found a high degree of this ailment found in dire wolves and even Smilodon in the La Brea tar pits. When this ailment comes up in dogs, it is generally due to inbreeding. In the fossil record, this could be that the dire wolves were getting inbred before their extinction. This is why it is important that your dire wolves are genetically diverse. Also, the genes responsible for this ailment must be identified for when reconstructing the dire wolf. These genes must either be fixed or avoided.
At 12 to 16 weeks old, at least somewhere in there, the weaning should be complete, but the pups will still eat a regurgitated food if they are taken by their natural or surrogate mothers. Their eyes, at least from looking at the colossal wolves, will start to change from blue to amber gold, and around this time, their weight should be around 22 to 30 pounds. When the weaning is complete, the wolf pups are to be fed on a carnivore diet. Colossal wolves were given a diet of deer, beef, and horse meat, supplemented with organ meats and specialized nutritional supplements. The same diet could definitely suffice for dire wolves, although they will need to increase their amount as they grow. An adult dire wolf is said to need 10 pounds of meat daily. But be cautious for this, for if they're anything like modern wolves, dire wolves would operate on a feast and famine cycle and would really, wolf down a large amount of meat when they're able to. So you would definitely need to monitor this to avoid the wolves becoming obese. At this stage, they should have a continued steady growth and development. Also, they will be learning social dynamics and pack hierarchy. And they will also be refining hunting and survival skills. At this stage, the pups should gain like 1.3 pounds a week for the next 3 months. And also, their adult teeth will start coming in. At this point, the dire wolf should probably weigh around 70 pounds. As the wolf pups grow up, especially starting in the first few weeks, they will need companions so that they can develop social skills amongst their own kind. This could be done with other dire wolves, colossal wolves, or even domestic dogs. But if the pups are destined for rewilding projects, they will definitely need to be with either other dire wolves or colossal wolves. They must seek other wolves for companionships, and not humans or domestic dogs in this case. At this stage, they'll nearly be adult size and weight, with a full adult coat head being developed, and they will have an increased independence, and they have the potential to diverse, seek out mates, and establish territory. At this stage, they will be fully grown and sexually mature, have an active participation in pack dynamics, a potential breeding and reproduction services, territory defense and social interactions, hunting and providing for the pack. By 3 years, their skeleton will be fully grown and their adult size will be reached. However we resurrect the dire wolf, whether as modified wolves or colossal, or a jackal that's been modified with ancient direwolf genes, we would definitely need to raise these wolves up properly so that we can welcome them into our world. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this video. It's much appreciated. Ever, it's no doubt that ever since the Colossal Biosciences has announced their wolves to the world, it was definitely an interesting and wild ride. Well, I definitely know that they are not literal direwolves or have a gene of a direwolf in it, but still, I still think that this is definitely the beginning of a crazy deal with the science of de-extinction. And when David Glean asked the sponsor for a video on taking care of direwolves, I couldn't resist. Along with the information on direwolves and how we raise gray wolves in captivity, I was pretty fascinated to learn that Colossal Biosciences has made a husbandry manual on their wolves made public. So, and that became a very, very useful tool as I was making this video, especially on the list on the milestones that the pups would make. Now, while, like I said before earlier in the video, the dire wolves could give us a lot of curveballs and surprises, but these colossal wolves would definitely give us a good idea of what it would be like to raise a true dire wolves. So it would definitely be interesting to see how it goes. And by the time this video was made, they were talking about expanding their current wolf pack and even modifying the wolves further with more traits of the dire wolves. So we'll see how it goes from here on out. I want to say thank you for David Glean for sponsoring this episode. If you want to be able to support him, definitely check out his David Glean's writing desk. He's got a project going on that is utmost fascinating, so I definitely recommend you check him out. I want to say thank you to Keenan Taylor for illustrating my concepts and bringing it into reality. If you want to support him, I'll send you a link to his YouTube and DeviantArt pages down below. If you like this video and I'd like to see more like it, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this with those who you know would definitely love this as well. I also want to say thank you to my patrons, members, subscribers, and viewers like you. Thank you. It really helps me out in every way, shape, and form. If you want to become a Patreon, I'll send a link to my Patreon page down below. And for everything else, well, you know what to do. For this year's 2025 PZA special, what if the Australian megafauna have survived to recent times? I'm definitely looking forward to this one, and it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. I hope that each and every one of you has a grand day. Adios!